meeting of Inverclyde Council. This meeting is being held remotely and also in person and will be filmed and recorded for live and subsequent broadcast available through the Council website. The Council is a data controller under the General Data Protection Regulations and the Data Protection Act 2018. We broadcast and record Council meetings to fulfil our public task obligation to enable members of the public to observe the democratic process. Data collected during the process will be retained in accordance with the Council's published policies available through the Council's website. Members of the Council are reminded that they should follow the Council's established meeting protocols, including around the use of the chat facility, and that comments made in the chat facility are visible to all participants in the meeting, which may include members of the public who have also received invites to the meeting. So, good afternoon, members, and welcome to the meeting. Before we start, there's a couple of things I would like to say. On Saturday coming, it's the Kilt Walk, which I know a number of bodies from the Council are taking part in. And I know that Councillor Moran is walking with a group in memory of his son. And can I just wish everybody who is taking part in the Council every success on Saturday. And also today, it would be remiss of us if we were not to acknowledge the birthday of the leader of the Council, who you can see is not in his usual seat today, no doubt having a dram beside him that you cannot see. It's one of these major birthdays, and I'll leave it to your own guesswork to guess which one of these major birthdays it is. But we pass on our heartiest congratulations to you, Stephen, and hope you have a great day. And it's very fitting it should fit in with a full Council. All the best.
Happy birthday.
You got a second?
Do we have any apologies and declarations of interest?
August, we now move to an assignment roll call before proceeding to declarations of interest. And the following members please indicate if they are present at the meeting either in person or remotely. Councillor Armstrong.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Brennan.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Brooks.
In chamber.
Councillor Cassidy.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Doherty.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Schroeder.
Present in chamber.
Councillor Curley.
Present in chamber.
Councillor Daisley.
Present in chamber.
Councillor Jackson.
In the chamber.
Councillor Law.
Present remotely.
Councillor McCabe.
Present remotely.
Councillor McCluskey.
Present remotely.
Councillor McCormick.
Present remotely.
Councillor McGuire. Robert Mackenzie.
In the chamber.
Councillor McVeigh.
In chamber.
Councillor Moran.
In the chamber.
An apology from Councillor Nelson. Councillor Quinn.
Present remotely.
Councillor Reynolds.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Robertson.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Wilson.
Present in the chamber.
Are there any declarations of interest?
Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Provost. I need to declare a connection to item 5. I am a WASPy woman. Thank you.
And does that, are you planning on staying within the chamber?
Thank you. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Councillor Reynolds?
I also want to declare a connection. I'm a WASPy woman and I will be staying in the chamber.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Provost.
Councillor McCluskey.
Thank you. Can I declare an interest in the item on GP out of hours as a member of the Greater Health Board, and I'll remove myself from the chamber during the discussion. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Provost. Councillor McCabe.
Councillor McCabe?
Thanks, Rob. Can I thank you for your kind words and for suitably embarrassing me as well? But I would like to declare a personal interest in item 5 to. I have close family members who are WASPy women, but I don't think that precludes me from participating in the debate. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Oh,
Just
Possibly, I was thinking they have some.
thank you, Councillor Maguire. There are, as you are well aware, members, 2 late papers that have arrived on my desk. The reinstatement of hours GP provision and also the SNP group representation on the audit committee. I'm happy to accept these as late papers. Does that make your agreement?
Great.
Thank you. For you, Councillor McCluskey, I will take the GP out of hours as the last item on the agenda. I also intend to, you'll see that there's a bit of business regarding the Bitmire Trust, of which we are all members. At the end of the meeting, I will close Inverclyde Council and we will open the Bitmire Trust for which should only be a couple of minutes. You're more than welcome to come back into the Bitmire Trust, Councillor McCluskey, if you so require. But by the time you get back in, we'll probably be away home. The minutes of the meeting of the Inverclyde Council committees, subcommittees and panels. The Inverclyde Council meeting on the 15th of February, page 47 to 53. I will move that is a true and proper minute. Is there anybody otherwise minded? Thank you. The appointment panel, shortlisting head of legal, democratic, digital and customer services, the 21st of February, page 54. Councillor Robertson, please. Thank you. Is there anybody otherwise minded? Thank you. The grants subcommittee, 26th of February, 55 to 58. Councillor Brooks. Is there anybody otherwise minded? Thanks. Inverclyde Council special meeting, 29th of February, pages 59 to 77, and I will move that as a true and proper minute. Is there anybody otherwise minded? Thank you. The audit committee meeting on the 5th of March, 78 to 79, I will move that as a true and proper minute. Is there anybody otherwise minded? Thank you. The planning board of the 6th of March, page 80, Councillor McVeigh, please. Thank you. Anybody otherwise minded? Council local review body on the 6th of March, 81 to 83. Councillor McVeigh, please. Thank you. The appointment panel interviews head of legal, democratic, digital and customer services on the 11th of March. Councillor Robertson, please. Thank you. Anybody otherwise minded? The social work and social care scrutiny panel on the 12th of March, 85 to 87. Councillor Brennan, please.
I move this as a true progress.
Thank you. Anybody otherwise minded? Thank you. General Purposes Board on the 13th of March, 88 to 89. Councillor Moran. Thank you. Environment and Regeneration Committee, the 14th of March, 90 to 97. Councillor McCormick, please.
I move the minute as a true record promised.
Thank you, Councillor McCormick. Is there anybody otherwise minded? Thank you. Policy and Resources Committee on the 26th of March, 103 to 107. Councillor McCabe, please.
I move the minute as a true record promised, but I think you skipped the education and community.
I know I've skipped it. There was so many hands up round about me. Is there anybody otherwise minded in that? And we'll go back to the Education Communities Committee on the 19th of March, 98 to 102. Councillor Fogarty. Thank you. Is there anybody otherwise minded? The Local Police Fire Scrutiny Panel on the 28th of March, 108 to 110. Councillor Wilson.
I move this as true record promise.
Thank you. Is there anybody otherwise minded? Thank you. The Planning Board on the 3rd of April, 111 to 117. Councillor McVeigh, please.
I move this as true record promise.
Thank you, Councillor McVeigh. And the Local Review Body on the 3rd of April, 118 to 120. Thank you. Is there anybody otherwise minded? Thank you. And the General Purposes Board on the 10th of April, 1212 to 122. Councillor Moran, please. Thank you. Members will be aware that there is private business within these minutes that have been approved. Does anybody have any intention of bringing up any anything regarding the private business, then that's fine. That saves us getting into private session at the end of the meeting. Item number 3 in the agenda, on page 1 of the minutes. The formal withdrawal from the Clyde Plan Joint Committee and elected membership representation on the Regional Spatial Planning Committee. It's a remit from the Environment and Regeneration Committee. Ms. Pollock?
Thank you, Provost. At the meeting of the March Environment and Regeneration Committee, it was recommended to withdraw from Clyde Plan, the Strategic Development Planning Authority, as strategic development plans no longer have a function in National Planning Framework 4. At the request of the 8 members in Clyde Plan subgroup, the City Region Cabinet has been established to consider regional spatial strategies, which the Council is prepared to participate in. Unlike Clyde Plan, final approval of any regional strategies will require the approval of each of the participant authorities. As well as agreeing to formally withdraw from Clyde Plan, nominations are sought for 2 members to participate in the new subgroup, it is anticipated to meet 2 to 3 times per annum.
Thank you, Ms. Pollock. Members will see that on page 2 there are 2 recommendations that we have to agree on. The first, that this council agrees to formally withdraw from the Clyde Plan Joint Committee as requisition funding to Glasgow City Council as lead authority for the Glasgow City region. Can we agree that?
Agree.
Thank you. And that the council appoints 2 elected members to sit on the Regional Spatial Planning Committee on behalf of Inverclyde Council. And it would give me great pleasure to propose Councillor McVeigh, the convener of the Planning Board, and Councillor Wilson, the former convener of the Planning Board, to be these 2 elected members to sit on that committee. Is there any other recommendations or nominations for that? Okay. Councillor Brooks, can you second that, please?
Thanks for that, Provost. Yeah, I'm happy to second your motion. I think it's important that this council is well represented on spatial planning, and not only do we have our proposals to have a current chair of our planning board there, but also Councillor Wilson has the experience of spatial planning from Clyde Plan. So I think your proposal is the right proposal for the citizens of Clyde.
Are there any further recommendations or nominations? Thank you. Can we agree these proposals? Thank you very much. Item 4 on the agenda, Capital Strategy 2024 to 2034 and Treasury Management Strategy Statement and Annual Investment Strategy 24-25 to 27-28. This is a remit from the Policy and Resources Committee. Ms. Pollock?
Thank you, Provost. Nothing further to add, just a remit from the March Policy and Resources Committee seeking Council approval of the Capital Strategy and the Treasury Management and Investment Strategy.
Can we agree this remit from the Policy and Resources Committee members? Thank you. Item 5 on the agenda is the motion in support of Waspie Women, a notice of motion by Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Armstrong, please.
Thank you, Provost. First of all, I'd like to welcome Elizabeth McCorry from Waspie Inverclyde, who is here today to listen to our comments, our deliberations. Thank you. I've already indicated I am a Waspie woman. This is a matter that has concerned me greatly over many years. I'm happy to move the motion. However, I think it's shameful that this is the 3rd motion that we've had. The motion today is intended to build upon the 2 previous motions. As I say, I think it's regrettable that a third motion it is required. I'm not going to go through all the points of the motion. I hope it's very clear. There's perhaps one item that I should speak to, and that is on the matter of whatever compensation is agreed, whenever that compensation is agreed, that it should also be payable to the estates of the 275,000 Waspie women who have lost their lives, who have died. I think it's important for a number of reasons. I think there's a fairness argument. I think it's fair. These women lost money and were the victims of maladministration, suffered an injustice, and should have been compensated. The fact that they cannot receive the benefit, I think, it should not stop their beneficiaries, their families, from at least benefiting. But there's another argument. A lot of us WASPy women suspect that delays in making any kind of decision are only to allow more of us to die. And I think if the principle that the payment should go to all WASPy women, whatever is agreed, the payment should go to all WASPy women, that takes away that argument, that suspicion. I think I'm obviously bringing forward the motion in support of the 5,600 WASPy women in Inverclyde. Since the motion was submitted, a couple of things have happened that are important to acknowledge. On the 16th of April, the Ombudsman wrote to the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions asking for an update on the government's response to their report. That is this report. For members' interest, I will leave it in the members' lounge for anyone to read. The government's response initially seemed to be noted. It's very, very unusual for the Ombudsman to present their report to Parliament. This is an exceptional set of circumstances. And it was done, as is described in the report, because the Ombudsman felt that the DWP, the Department of Work and Pensions, would not accept their recommendations, would not accept their conclusions. And that was why the unusual step of laying it before Parliament was taken in the first place. The reaction, the response seemed to be noted. So the Ombudsman has last week written again, asking, for an update on the response. The other thing that has happened since the, since I submitted the motion, was that Patricia Gibson MP now has a backbenchers debate on the 16th of May in the House of Commons, which is an opportunity, cross-party opportunity for parties to give their opinion, give their stance. So those are the two things that have happened that are significant. I want to stress that women's pensions are complicated. Women's pensions are much more complicated than male pensions. The whole pension system was devised according to male working practices, i.e. you start working and you continue working without stop until you retire. And that has never been women's working practices. Women have always had periods of caring, whether that's for children or for others. Essentially, they've always had gaps. And previous inequalities and gender discrimination from the 1960s and 70s are hard baked into the pension system that we have got today. And those inequalities are still having ramifications. 68% of women born in the 1950s rely on the state pension. And that's completely different to men. For men, it's 44%. For women, 68% rely on the state pension. There's also, I want to make a small point, it's not really a small point, about the gender pay gap. Nowhere is the gender pay gap wider than for women aged 60 plus in full-time employment. The gender pay gap for women aged 60 plus in the gender pay gap is 14.2%. 14.2% for those women. So those women who were not able to retire when they'd been told most, if not all, of their working lives that they were going to retire, now face that very significant gender pay gap. Now, overall, the gender pay gap is 7% something. For women aged 60 plus, it's 14.2. There's another anomaly, quirk in the system, the reduced rate election. And that was better known as the Married Woman's Stamp. That I've given it its official title, but probably members will recognise the term the Married Woman's Stamp. And that meant that working women paid less of contribution, but although they were making a contribution, it added nothing to their own pension arrangements. Instead, married women were expected to receive 60% of their husband's pension when their husband retired. I want to say a little bit about the Department for Work and Pensions. The report was presented to Parliament because the Ombudsman did not have any confidence that the Department for Work and Pensions would deal with the report properly, sympathetically. Now, I have no doubt that the DWP is very significantly under-resourced and understaffed. But for example, in December 2023, the DWP estimated that it had underpaid about 210,000 pensioners due to national insurance gaps, which should have been filled by the Home Responsibility Protection Benefit payable to those claiming child benefit between 1978 and 2010. Now, I believe that the vast majority of those 210,000 pensioners who've been underpaid are in fact WASPy women. I know someone who queried the gaps in their pension, and the DWP admitted, they were the person was right, that they had miscalculated it, and then said, well, when's it likely to be sorted? To be told that there's a backlog of 40 to 50 weeks. My personal experience, I have some gaps. I lived abroad for quite a long time. Many months ago now, I paid 2 years. So, that's a good thing to do. I'm in a very fortunate position that I'm able to do that. Paid it. I checked this morning. It's still not in my pension forecast. So I know I've paid it, but the inefficiencies and delays in the DWP, I've no idea. By my calculation, I actually should be paying another year, but I don't know whether to pay it or not, because is it actually ever going to transfer into a pension? I want to finish with a bit of a shout out for the legislation that has made a difference. I'm in the last tranche of WASPy women. I'm the youngest of the WASPy women, so I've lost the most money, but I had the longest time to prepare, and my pension contributions were under the better legislation, longer under the better legislation. Obviously, the 1975 Sex Discrimination Act, when it made it illegal for banks and retailers to treat women differently. I achieved adulthood in the late 1970s. Now, I know at that time there were still retailers, although it was illegal, there were still retailers who were requiring a male guarantor for items to be purchased. And I mean, one that I found quite incredible was that a single woman couldn't get a bank loan or a credit card without their dad's signature, even if they earned more than their father. Their father was required to sign saying, well, yeah, it's okay, she can handle a credit card. So the 1975 Sex Discrimination Act, everybody knows about that. The two I would also like to mention, it was only in 1990 that women started to be taxed individually, where the income was seen as ours as opposed to an extension to our husband. And I think that's very significant. The 1990s, not that long ago. And the other one I really want to mention is 1993, and this was as a result of a European directive that all working women became entitled to statutory maternity pay. And that's critical. As I was saying before, it is the norm for women to have career gaps, job gaps of some description. But it was only in 1993 when it became mandatory for working women to receive statutory maternity pay. I'm happy to move the motion. I hope all members can support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Reynolds, will you second the motion, please?
Thank you, Provost. I'm dismayed that it's necessary to second this motion. Rossby women were born in the 1950s, and their complaint is not about making the state pension age equal with men, although this is still an issue for some that are demanding full restitution. It is about the lack of notice of the change in pension age, which left millions of women unable to plan financially for their retirement, and in many cases left them with no income. It's important also to note that this injustice, where the PHSO have found the DWP guilty of maladministration, have now recommended that compensation should be paid to the 3.6 million affected Rossby women. The then Chancellor of the Exchequer, George Osborne, stated that it was the easiest saving he had ever had to make, which will eventually amount to up to 181 billion if there's no resolution. Whatever compensation is finally paid out, the Treasury has and will benefit from this unjust policy which chose women as an easy target. All of this comes on top of decades of other injustices, including unequal pay, poor maternity pay, smaller pensions in men, pay gaps due to caring responsibilities and lack of career opportunities, again leading to lower incomes. Many women have been unable to reduce their working hours to help with caring responsibilities, thus, for example, having the knock-on effect of young mothers or parents unable to afford childcare and return to work, and those ripples continue throughout our local economies. Other women had their divorce agreements based on a pension age of 60. Others were hit where the divorce agreement included the family home by the crash in endowment policies and were financially unable to address the shortages. I was born in 1956. Personally, I consider myself one of the luckier Rossby women. I've got good health and have been able to continue working, and therefore have some ability to top up my reducing savings for retirement. I don't have the desperate stories or situations of many others, even though I've had nearly 50,000 taken from me, and that does not include the lack of the loss of endowment money and the house, I'll say that later. However, it doesn't mean that I'm unaffected. I only knew of the change in my state pension to age to 62 through my union, and since then, nothing. As a young community pharmacist, I was consistently offered lower pay than my male counterparts after finishing my degree in the pre-registration period. When expecting my first child, I was told by my employer, I hope you're not expecting me to pay you maternity pay. Naively, I left this employment and did not earn until I took up another employment soon after the birth of my daughter 40 years ago. Statutory maternity pay was poor during the 1980s when I had my two other children, and it still lags behind other European countries. My divorce agreement was based on a number of factors, which included my state pension age at that time of 60. I lost thousands due to my endowments not paying out and had to sell the family home during the housing price slump in order to pay off my mortgage, again losing thousands of pounds. Caring responsibilities were also curtailed due to my financial inability to reduce my working hours, meaning my family struggled to balance work and family life. I want to stress that I'm one of the important, the lucky ones, and I'm not complaining. I'm just pointing out how, even in my circumstances, I had to deal with things and I was affected financially. I support the Rossby campaign because I recognise that these decades of injustice and inequality have had a devastating effect on women my age. And on top of that, we get the pension age movement, the lack of notice about the pension age movement. Unless these are addressed by reasonable compensation, yet again, women are paying the price. I hope that you'll feel able to support our motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Would any other member care to make a contribution? Councillor Brennan, please.
Thanks very much, Provost, through you. Thanks to Councillors Armstrong and Reynolds for bringing this motion and to people for attending here today. I'd say that I'm very happy to support the motion that recognises state pension inequality. I know we live in a political age where people bring their own experiences to their political life, and I suppose I would like to add that personal experience is always very important, but we all bring a range of identities to the council chamber, and I think it's not necessarily just up to women in the WASPI age bracket to fly the flag. It's there, and that's why we're fortunate as well that we've got two previous motions that Councillor McCabe has brought to the council. So yeah, I think it's Councillor Reynolds is absolutely right. It was the lack of notice and then that choice being removed, as it so often is for women, to keep working or not, that it was just taken away from them. And I suppose what that ends up meaning, you've got some of these experiences outlined in the paperwork that you have there, but also we see the women in the workplace who are overrepresented in similar ways in social care and childcare, education. When we've looked at previous motions to do with trade union representation, women are overrepresented there. And we recognise the value of these roles that women so often do when it suits us, and then they can end up being ignored. And when we come to economically unjust times, as we're in just now, then so often it's women who are the first to be affected. I think what that ends up meaning is we end up in a situation as we are in now, which is incredibly unfortunate and really unpleasant, a kind of grim battle of where inequality is worst. And we have campaign groups like WASPI Women, other groups clamouring and fighting for policy priority to try and decide where is the inequality at worst in our society. And that's nowhere that anybody wants to be at all. I think the only thing that I would say just when I finish up, I suppose it's important not to play politics in these types of issues. I know that the WASPI campaign itself is looking to that and saying when they're looking at, it's going to be a big issue, I think, when we're looking at MPs, when the general election comes, whenever it comes, and they're saying that actually the WASPI women numbers, we've got 5,600 here, that number has helpfully been put in, but actually the majorities of MPs in about 166 constituencies are actually roughly mirroring the number of WASPI women, and they could be there really making a decision when we get to that general election time. Finally, I think the only thing I would take some issue with in the motion, and it's just a polite point, politely made, we've got here that the state pension inequality has, and the lasting injustice has affected WASPI women's ability to live relatively normal lives. I'm sure it wouldn't be for us to say whether or not anyone's living a normal life. In any way, I don't think even Councillors Armstrong and Reynolds would be possibly meaning that. I'm sure what we're meaning is financially secure, economically competent lives. That's what we're looking at. It's not necessarily for us to say what life is normal or not, and I don't think any one of us would want to, but yes, happy to support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Brennan. I'm going to go to Councillor Maguire and then Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, Robert. I'm going to keep this brief because I think the two views covered more than enough ground. So I just want to say firstly thank you to Councillors Armstrong and Reynolds for bringing this forward, but also for sharing your experiences. Both of you have very eloquently put forward impacts of the state pension age change amongst a lot of the inequality that both of you face purely for being a woman throughout your lives. It is an important fight, and the fact that George Osborne said it was an easy save, like that's just, to me, that's deplorable. I can't believe that anybody who's a public servant or in public office would say that. I fully support the motion that you brought forward, and I really hope that justice serves soon. My granddad died before justice was found in this, and I hope that it will be served quicker than we could imagine currently.
Thank you, Councillor Maguire. Councillor McCabe, please.
Thanks, Provost. I too thank Councillors Armstrong and Reynolds for bringing forward this motion, and my group's certainly happy to reaffirm our support, which was obviously reflected in the previous motions for the WASPI women. This is an injustice that absolutely is long overdue being addressed. And just to confirm, as the leader of the council, I'm happy to agree to the requests which are set out in the motion, and we'll send those letters and make the points that are requested in the motion.
Thank you, Councillor McCabe. Any other member? Councillor Armstrong, would you like to?
Yeah, thank you to all members. The normal is about financial independence, financial autonomy. That was the meaning in that sense, and I've sent that aspect. And I'm sorry if it was confusing. Thanks to all who have contributed, and thank you for your support, and thanks to the council leader for agreeing to the requests in the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Members, can we agree the motion on page 68?
Agreed.
Thank you. The additional item, the first additional item, SNP group representation on the audit committee. Ms. Pollock, please.
Thank you, Provost. This report asks the council to consider a change proposed by the SNP group to membership of the audit committee. This should replace Councillor Nelson and Councillor Curley, and also asking the council to appoint a convener for the audit committee and confirm the special responsibility allowance currently allocated to that position.
Thank you, Ms. Pollock. You have heard there, members, that it is recommended that the council, one, considers the proposed changes to the SNP group representation on the audit committee. Can we agree that? Thank you. And item 2, appoints a convener for the audit committee and confirms the special responsibility allowance currently allocated to that position. Do we have any nominations for convener of the audit committee? Councillor Robertson, please.
Thank you, Provost. I would like to propose Councillor Curley as
Councillor, thank you. Do we have a seconder for Councillor Curley?
Thank you. Yes, I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Do we have other nominations? Councillor Brooks, please.
Thank you very much, Provost. I'd like to propose Councillor Wilson, who is currently the deputy convener. I think this is a very important committee and contribute to supporting that report.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Do we have a seconder for Councillor Wilson? Thank you, Councillor Clockerty. Are there any further nominations? We have a proposal for Councillor Curley and we have a proposal, an amendment for Councillor Wilson. Ms. Paul, please.
Okay. I'm going to go through and ask for, if you are voting for the motion, from Councillor Robertson for Councillor Curley to be chair of the audit committee, or the amendment from Councillor Brooks, seconded by Councillor Clockerty, for Councillor Wilson to be chair of the committee. So, Councillor Armstrong.
Motion.
Councillor Brennan.
Amendment.
Councillor Brooks.
Amendment.
Councillor Cassidy.
Amendment.
Councillor Clockerty.
Amendment.
Councillor Crowder.
Motion.
Councillor Curley.
Motion.
Councillor Daisley.
Motion.
Councillor Jackson.
Amendment.
Councillor Law.
Motion.
Councillor McCabe.
Amendment.
Councillor McCluskey.
Amendment.
Councillor McCormick.
Amendment.
Councillor Maguire. Provost Mackenzie.
Abstain.
Councillor McVeigh. Councillor Moran.
Amendment.
Councillor Quinn.
Abstain.
Councillor Reynolds.
Motion.
Councillor Robertson.
Motion.
Councillor Wilson.
Amendment.
We have 7 votes for the motion, 11 for the amendment and 3 abstentions, so the amendment is carried and Councillor Wilson is chair of the audit committee.
Thank you, Ms. Pollock, and congratulations to Councillor Wilson, who is now appointed chair of the audit committee. The next item.
Provost, could I raise an issue before we move on? Obviously, Councillor Wilson was the previous vice chair of the audit committee, so that leaves a vacancy for vice chair. So I don't know whether we seek to fill that here or we wait till the next scheduled meeting of the council.
No, thank you, Councillor McCabe. I actually had that on my on my papers here. Do we have a nomination for Vice Chair of the Audit Committee? Councillor Ross.
Provost, unsurprisingly, Councillor Curley.
Curley.
Yes, happy to. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Are there any other nominations for Vice Chair? Thank you. Then I would declare Councillor Curley as Vice Chair of the Audit Committee. Thank you, Councillor McCabe. The further item in the agenda, the reinstatement of out-of-hours GP provision in Inverclyde. Notice a motion by Councillor Clockerty. I know Councillor Bucklusky has he left already? He's left, that's fine. Ms. Paul, please.
This is a motion from Councillor Clockerty in relation to countersigned by Councillor McGuire in relation to the out of hours provision.
Councillor Clockerty.
Thank you, Provost, and firstly, can I thank you for agreeing to this great motion, Provost. It was much appreciated. And I think members who were next door, not an hour ago, would appreciate why we felt that it was important to bring this motion to Council today. For me, I feel as if I've been on a journey with this motion since 2020. It's been a long journey. February 2020, the Greater Glasgow Clyde Health Board works with the special measures and GP out-of-hours services, and they said it was to stabilise the service in order that we can make sure that we have a robust service for the future of Greater Glasgow and Clyde, including Inverclyde. Over 4 years later, we found out that the service in Inverclyde is still not going to be the same as other areas within Greater Glasgow and Clyde. We found out that the only change after that whole period of time is going to be an extra Sunday service, which puts Inverclyde at a disadvantage to every other area in Greater Glasgow and Clyde. And I spoke to colleagues earlier, it's not even a question of equality, it is a question of equity. It's a question of how can Greater Glasgow and Clyde believe it is right for the most poorest area that we look after to be given less of a service than some of the most affluent areas that we look after. And there's something just not right. And I've said before, there is a danger that Greater Glasgow and Clyde drops the Clyde bit and are really just known as the Greater Glasgow Council. And that is something that nobody wants to happen. But we are in danger of that. We've seen a diminution of services taken away from Clyde. And our constituents feel this, and they'll say this to us constantly all the time. What we've lost is the community. And it's up to us as elected members to try to stand up to say it's not acceptable. And I do appreciate that we have had cross-party support in this and consistency all the time that we've been united in this vision of GP out-of-hours services should be reinstated in Inverclyde, and GPs should be able to cover Inverclyde 24/7. And also what I'm asking for is the same as every other area in Greater Glasgow and Clyde. No more or no less, but for the area of some of the greatest health inequalities and the greatest poverty, for us to have a less of a service than other areas of Greater Glasgow and Clyde is a shame. And I would, again, sorry for bringing this to the table, I do think it's important. I'm not saying more because I've not said it all before, and I would appreciate Councillor McGuire could second the motion. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor Clockerty. Councillor McGuire, please.
Thank you, Provost. Three must be the magic number for bringing motions back here today, and I agree wholeheartedly with Councillor Clockerty that it has been a long journey for Inverclyde when it comes to out-of-hours. In February 2023, I stood here and advocated for better out-of-hours services for the people of Inverclyde. I made the plea to reinstate fully our local authorities' non-emergency healthcare services. We are all aware here that Greater Glasgow Clyde will be meeting and confirming the decisions on local provision hours by the end of April, and we're basically there. Today, after 2 previous motions that the majority of people in the room agreed with, we are once again letting Greater Glasgow Clyde know that we will not settle for anything less than a full local 7 days a week service. Why should the people of Inverclyde have to do a 50-mile round trip for necessary care? Why are the people of Inverclyde Why are the people of Inverclyde not as worthy as others to have local access to care? Yes, Greater Glasgow Clyde will provide transport for people who need care, but how much time will that take our constituents? How much unnecessary distress will that put on people who are already feeling ill? How much will this cost the taxpayer, and is this a good use of public funds? Why do people in Glasgow get access to care within 20 minutes, with only 8 miles between 3 Glasgow sites, but we need to travel at least 3 times farther just because we're from Inverclyde? We cannot allow these decisions to be made without making absolutely clear to Greater Glasgow and Clyde that their proposals, as they stand, are discriminatory. They are creating health inequity that will disproportionately affect the people that we represent here in Inverclyde more than anybody else in the Greater Glasgow and Clyde area. I second this motion and I invite the full council to support this bill. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor Maguire. Would any other member care to make a contribution? Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Provost. I actually didn't really intend to speak about this at all. I intended to come in today and say I agree and simply support the emergency motion that's been put forward. But actually, on the back of the briefing that we just had, I do something to say because there was one slide in particular that we were showing that really showed me why we actually have to fight this. This is not simply a matter of other places have bought something and we want to have it. The things that other parts of Greater Glasgow and Clyde have, we are not going to get. What is it, 5 or 6 sites in the new settled model, and the only one that has a provision that's different from the others is Inverclyde. Where are our health outcomes, where are our health profile entirely different to what it is, I might have less of an issue with that. But we have entrenched, stubborn, generational health issues, and a diminution of service on any level is not going to help us move those in the right direction. That particular slide tremendously exercised me this afternoon when we saw literally every other part of the health board area being given the same service in the new model that's going to be proposed to be settled. I know it's not going to be Jen, I hope it will be, except Inverclyde being particularly different for what reason? Probably I don't know what that reason is, and that's why I want to say something, because I just think rather than simply agreeing, we wholeheartedly, thoroughly agree with this. We really need to make a representation. So thank you, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Councillor Jackson.
I thank Provost. Again, very much support this. This time last week, I had to take my 6-month-old grandson up at Queen Elizabeth, driving by Inverclyde Loyal and 3 health centres within the town to go and see an hours doctor. I mean, this is all about poverty and inequality. 2023 findings of the Joseph Brown Tree Foundation report that over 1 million people in Scotland are in poverty. And as we know, people living in our poorest communities are more likely to suffer from poor health, and as a result, more likely to need to see an GP. Having to wait for a volunteer to come from Greater Glasgow, as we heard, seven vehicles available for all the Greater Glasgow. I mean, that's just ridiculous. So it is, and it just means a lot of people locally who can't afford maybe going for transport, they're just going to cancel and wait and try and see a GP, a local GP the following day, which could then make their symptoms and make them more sick. 37% of the poorest households do not have access to a car, compared with just 8.3% of middle income earners. The poorest households are nearly 7 times as likely to have no access to a car as middle income earners. Already, as I say, if you're a parent of a young child and you need to see an out-of-doctor's GP, you need to go to Paisley, Queen Elizabeth. and it only makes it hard for people in the poorest communities to see GPs. When the NHS was first introduced in 1945, it was to make healthcare available to everyone, not just those who could afford it. And as we've heard, as Natasha just said, in this case, it means a 50-mile round trip for anybody who wants to go and see a GP. The poorest communities are going to suffer for this, so and we all know that. Inverclyde does not need its troubles. I fully support this motion because we need to stop this. I'm glad that Elizabeth and my SNP colleagues were all in agreement with this. But we've got to remember, we represent one of the poorest communities in Scotland, and this is going to affect them adversely. Too many people in poverty don't have access to cars. They're going to be classed as second-class citizens, and we are going to have a two-tier health service and access to our GP. So I fully support this, and I hope others do too.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor McVeigh and then Councillor McCabe, please.
Thank you, Provost. I fully support the motion as well, and I echo the comments of previous speakers. I think this is a very important motion, and I would say to Councillor Clockerty, don't apologise for bringing it forward, Councillor Clockerty, because all we're asking for is equality for us here in Inverclyde, and I hope that when the council leader does write to the Chief Executive for the Health Board, he makes it perfectly clear, and I'm sure he will, that these proposals are not acceptable, and we ask that they're revisited to come back with something better that suits the people of Inverclyde, because we deserve the same type of cover to everybody else.
Thank you, Councillor McVeigh. Councillor McCabe, please.
Yeah, thanks, Provost. Again, I would thank my colleagues for bringing forward this motion. Obviously, we are aware that the Health Board is likely to make a decision soon on this particular matter. I obviously attended the briefing this afternoon along with quite a number of members, and it just simply reinforced my view that we have been offered a second-class service, and we are not second-class citizens. And as Councillor Moran rightly pointed out, we pay our taxes in Inverclyde too. We help fund the Health Board, and we should be getting an equitable service with the rest of the Health Board, and I think we have to reiterate that point. It is good to have cross-party support in terms of this particular motion. I do understand that MPs and MSPs are being briefed tomorrow as well on this particular issue, and I hope we would get cross-party support from MPs and MSPs who represent Inverclyde that these proposals are not acceptable, and we want a 7-day-a-week service, the same as we had previously and the same as has been offered to other parts of the Health Board area. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor McCabe. Any other member wishing to contribute? Councillor Clocker, do you wish to say anything further? Councillor Moran?
Thank you. I just wanted to say, today when I spoke to one of my constituents in Port Barnacle who is a pensioner, and she's got a private pension, and then she got a state pension, so she's just qualified. But then she's got to start paying tax. Paying tax for what? For a second-class service. She's paying tax, she's getting the same treatment as someone in Glasgow. You're not looking for any special payments here. You just look to be treated the same. And what the other thing, the point of the presentation was 50% of the stuff done on consultation on the phone. You phone up that number, ask me for 1,000 questions, just sleep at that point. People like that, you lose your life. What do you do? 2 whole code will go to bed on my phone the doctor tomorrow. That time is too late. Tragically, I can say to you now, that people get diagnosed over the phones, and their diagnoses are wrong, and they don't know that until they actually try to see a GP or go to an actual medicine. So it's not good enough to get a phone consultation. If somebody's ill, they have to see a GP, and we're only asking the same as the Greater Glasgow Plate. Not anything special, just the same. So I fully support my 2 colleagues this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Moran. Councillor Brennan?
Thanks very much, Provost. I'm just going to speak very briefly because people have picked up on so many of the major points that came out of the briefing and that we know already and that we've known for a long time. But I think one point that I feel perhaps needs to be raised that might not have been was that we were at the briefing earlier on. Now, I could only hear the audio. I didn't get to see the slides. I'm sure a picture paints 1,000 words, but one of the things that jumped out at me that we were told was that we might get a lesser out of our GP provision in Inverclyde because of concerns about being able to staff the provision. Now, and that there are fragilities in the staffing levels already, and they don't want to exacerbate that any further. Now, we don't determine what education our young people get by whether or not we can get teachers to come and work in Inverclyde. We don't determine our levels of policing by whether or not we can get police to come to the area. So we shouldn't determine our healthcare by whether or not we can get healthcare professionals to come here and look after our health. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Is there anyone else? Councillor Cocker, do you want to contribute any further?
I'll be very, very brief. Just thank you for the input today. Thank Elizabeth and thank all the members for their input. The only thing I would say, I don't know, my motion speaks for itself, and we're asking Stephen Tribe, the Chief Executive of Greater Glasgow Airport. I don't know if we should copy him the Health Minister. I don't see if there's any wrong with that. I don't see there's any difficult problem with that. So if we can maybe copy him the Health Minister, then I think they should be aware of the strength feeling of what. So I would ask if members agree with that.
Thank you, Councillor Cocker. Can we agree the motion plus the small amendments that Councillor Cocker has indicated? Thank you, members. I will therefore close this meeting of Inverclyde Council and duly open it in a meeting of the Birkmire Trust. And in page 73 of your notes, you will see that it is a remit from the Environment and Regeneration Committee. Ms. Pollock, please.
Thank you, Provost. A request from my guts was considered by the Environment and Regeneration Committee in March, seeking permission for use of the council's land to install a number of low-level labyrinths and a number of park locations in Inverclyde. It is remitted from the Environment and Regeneration Committee to the council, sitting as the trustees of Birkmire Park, to grant consent for the use of the land in Birkmire Park and come home for the installation of a labyrinth in the park.
As a council, can we grant permission? Thank you very much.
Provost, can I come in on a point before you?
Sorry, Councillor Cave. Yes, of course.
I'm obviously content to give the approval, but I mean this process has been going on for quite some time, and in fact, the labyrinth in Birkmire Park in Kilmacombe was actually to be the first labyrinth constructed. And it's probably ended up going to be the last or the second last. And I just think there is an issue about approval process for the trust business. And I would request that officers look to see whether we can have an expedited process put in place rather than having to wait till we have a full council meeting to sit as the trust, whether there is a possibility, as we do in other circumstances as a council, have a sort of delegated authority mechanism. So it would be useful if we could at least explore the legalities and practicalities of that.
Thank you, Councillor McCabe, and the Chief Executive is nodding her head. And on that happy note, members, happy birthday once again, Councillor McCabe, and class dismissed. Thank you.